Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an era where communication has become so immediate, so constant, that we often forget the true nature of meaningful connection. Texting, calling, messaging, these tools are all part of our everyday lives. Yet have we really stopped to consider what happens when we stop texting and calling a man? When we step away from the constant buzz of our devices and remove ourselves from this incessant cycle of digital communication? First, let's establish a basic premise. We are social creatures. We are not solitary beings by nature. We crave connection. We seek it. But it is not enough to simply communicate in quantity. Communication is not the same as engagement. Communication is not the same as real, deep connection. Now let's look at the effects of withdrawing from this constant stream of texts and calls. What happens when we stop texting and calling? The first thing that occurs is the creation of space. We often view silence as a void, but silence is not empty. It is full of potential. You see, when you stop the regular barrage of messages, you allow space for thought, reflection, and understanding. It's in the silence where clarity can emerge. It's in the absence where the true nature of our desires and needs can come into focus. You see, human beings have a tendency to fill every moment with noise. We bombard each other with information. But what we fail to realize is that sometimes the absence of communication speaks louder than any text message could. It's only in the absence of communication that one truly gets a chance to consider the depth of their feelings, their motivations, their intentions. This is the place where personal growth and self-awareness live. When you stop texting and calling a man, you invite him into the same space of reflection. It's not a game. It's not manipulation. No, it's a call for something deeper. You give him the chance to wonder, to reflect on the relationship, to evaluate the bond he shares with you. A man will rarely step into the deeper corners of his own consciousness if he is constantly being pulled back into the distractions of daily interaction. And so by withdrawing, you encourage him to reflect on his role in the relationship, his true intentions, and his feelings. But here's the interesting part. This action has consequences, and they are not always predictable. By removing the constant communication, you will see how much value he places on you. The absence forces him to confront whether the connection is worth pursuing or if it was just a fleeting distraction in his life. You will observe how a man responds to this silence. Does he rise to the occasion and become more introspective, more engaged with you when the silence ended? Do you instead, or does he disappear into the noise of other distractions, content to let the connection wither? In many ways, it is this absence, this pause in communication that allows the truth to reveal itself. Not just in him, but in you as well. How much do you value this connection? How much are you willing to invest in it? The act of stopping, of pausing, reveals not just the other person, but yourself. It is the space where you can become aware of your own worth, your own needs, your own desires. This is not about playing games or testing someone. It's about stepping back from the noise, allowing the relationship to breathe, and seeing what emerges from that stillness. When the noise fades, what remains? The real connection, or simply the illusion of one? When you stop texting and calling, you stop distracting yourself from your true emotions, and you give the other person the chance to step forward as their most authentic self. You allow for a relationship to become what it is, not what you want it to be. You see, the problem we often face is not in the silence, but in our fear of it. We fear the absence of communication. We fear what it might reveal about us or about the other person. But it is only in that silence that you can truly hear the most important things, the things that lie beyond the noise of daily communication. So the question is, what happens when you stop texting and calling? You find truth, you find clarity, you find the space in which real connection can flourish. And you discover, perhaps for the first time, what it truly means to communicate from a place of honesty, of reflection, and of depth. Because that is the nature of communication, and that is also the nature of group agreement, and that is the nature of faith. Faith is a nature of agreement. Communication, in its most basic form, is the exchange of information between individuals. But when we consider the depth of human interaction, communication is far more than just the transmission of words or messages. It is the thread that connects us to one another, the bridge that allows us to share our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. In the modern world, communication has become almost instant, always accessible, and, at times, overwhelming. We text, we call, we message constantly. Yet, the true essence of communication often gets lost in this rapid, shallow exchange. And so, when we think of communication, we often picture a conversation back and forth, exchanging thoughts and opinions. However, the act of communication also involves listening, understanding, and sometimes silence. It is easy to get caught up in the need to communicate constantly, to respond immediately, to keep the interaction flowing. But this urgency can lead to superficial connections, where the depth of understanding is replaced by the speed of the message. The quality of communication often deteriorates when it becomes merely about keeping the conversation alive instead of truly listening and engaging. In relationships, the act of communicating is a delicate balance. It's not just about talking, it's about understanding the other person's point of view, being receptive to their needs, and being present in the moment. Communication involves vulnerability. To truly communicate with someone is to let down your guard, to expose your thoughts and feelings, and to allow them to do the same. Yet, in our fast-pacing digital world, it's easy to forget the weight of meaningful communication and the impact of truly connecting. So you must never underestimate the power of connection or forget the fundamental duty. Silence is often misunderstood in a world dominated by constant noise and interaction. In a society where we are perpetually encouraged to speak, share, and engage, silence can be perceived as uncomfortable or even unsettling. However, silence is not an absence of communication, but rather a powerful form of expression in its own right. It offers a space for thought, reflection, and understanding, allowing us to process information and emotions in a deeper, more meaningful way. Then, when silence enters a relationship, whether through a pause in conversation or a deliberate withdrawal from constant communication, it creates a gap that invites introspection. Silence can be an opportunity for both individuals to consider what is truly important, to evaluate the strength of their connection, and to gain clarity on their own thoughts and feelings. In many cases, it's in the silence that the most profound insights are revealed. Insights that may not be accessible when we are consumed by the rush of words and distractions. And so, analysts who believe that they have this startling ability, this alternate reality ability. Moreover, silence serves as a test of the depth of the bond between people. It reveals whether the relationship is built on genuine understanding or merely on the surface-level exchange of words. While some may struggle with silence, finding it awkward or uncomfortable, others may find it a necessary space to reconnect with themselves and the other person in a more authentic way. It is within this quiet pause that the most profound moments of clarity and connection often arise, as the absence of noise forces us to confront what truly matters in our relationships and in ourselves. As the sun rises over the horizon, reflection is a process that often goes unnoticed in the rush of daily life. It requires stepping back, slowing down, and observing not just external events, but our own reactions, feelings, and thoughts. In a world filled with distractions, reflection is often pushed aside in favor of immediate action or instant gratification. However, it is only through reflection that we can truly understand ourselves, our relationships, and the dynamics at play in our lives. And this is the time on which relationships, multiple aspects, and the dynamics at play in our lives. It is through this introspective process that we come to recognize patterns, uncover hidden emotions, and gain the clarity needed to make meaningful decisions, such that with age it becomes meaningful to spend half one's life consistently pursuing introspective understanding of the roots of one's doing. When we stop texting or calling a man, the space that is created allows for the time and opportunity to reflect. Without the constant back and forth of communication, there is a pause, a moment where both individuals can retreat into their own thoughts and assess their feelings. This time away from direct interaction does not signify abandonment, but rather provides an essential opportunity to observe the situation from a distance. In the absence of constant engagement, the mind becomes more attuned to the subtleties of the relationship and the nature of the connection. Reflection also helps us separate fleeting emotions from those that are more enduring. It enables us to assess whether our attachment to someone is based on genuine connection or if it is merely a temporary infatuation or distraction. During moments of reflection, we can evaluate our needs, desires, and boundaries, and consider what we truly seek in a relationship. It is often only through stepping back, creating distance and reflecting that we are able to see the truth of a situation, understand the motivations behind our actions, and decide on the course of action that aligns with our deeper values and goals. Connection is a fundamental human need, one that transcends mere communication. It goes beyond the act of exchanging words or even emotions. It is about forging a bond, an understanding, and a sense of shared experience. We crave connection because it gives us a sense of purpose, belonging, and emotional fulfillment. However, connection is not something that can be forced or manufactured. It is built over time through trust, vulnerability, and mutual respect. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create a unique opportunity for that connection to evolve in a more genuine and organic way. So, this is a really important thing. And you've talked about this before, and you've conducted research on it. Without the constant flow of messages and interactions, the space between two people allows the true nature of the connection to emerge. It is in this space that the quality of the relationship becomes clearer. Are we truly connected, or are we simply engaging out of habit or obligation? By stepping back and creating distance, we force ourselves and the other person to evaluate the foundation of the relationship. And because that's the foundation for the marriage, perhaps we need to look at that too, instead of the other person too. Is the connection strong enough to withstand periods of silence and distance, or is it fragile, relying on constant communication to stay intact? This absence of communication can also serve as a way to test the depth of the bond. True connection is not dependent on constant validation or reassurance. It thrives on mutual understanding and the ability to be present with one another, even in moments of quiet. When the texting and calling stop, the underlying connection is put to the test. The underlying connection is put to the test. The strength of the relationship will not be determined by the frequency of communication, but by the quality of the interaction when it occurs, and the depth of the bond that exists beneath the surface. Absence, in the context of relationships, is not a sign of neglect, but rather a potent force that can reveal the true nature of a connection. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create a space that allows both individuals to step back and reflect. It is in this absence that the dynamics of the relationship are tested. Distance, rather than diminishing affection or interest, often brings clarity. So it gives both parties the opportunity to assess how they feel about each other and the relationship itself. Sometimes it is only when we step away from someone that we can see how deeply we value their presence in our lives. And the final reason I want to revisit Franklin Roosevelt again is to remind myself that in the short term, long term, and medium term, it is pretty hard to imagine a government that doesn't threaten to ruin people's lives forever. The absence also allows the other person to recognize their own feelings and intentions. Without the constant presence of messages or calls, there is less distraction and more space to process emotions. This silence allows for introspection, and in turn it helps each individual decide whether they truly want to invest in the relationship or if their attachment was driven by the need for companionship or validation. So, it is a big decision, and when people feel driven toward by money, validation, in relationships where absence is felt, it can often create a sense of longing, where the value of the other person becomes more apparent. And there's cycles and events that affect longing more than just this one person or thing that's gone, like, say, the death of loved ones. Additionally, absence can reveal the strength of the emotional connection. If the bond is truly meaningful, it will endure the test of time and distance. However, if the relationship lacks depth or is founded on superficial communication, the absence may reveal its fragility. In this way, absence acts as a mirror, reflecting the true nature of the connection and the emotional investment of both individuals involved. And you see this, it strips away the distractions and exposes what is truly at the core of the relationship. Self-awareness is a critical component of any healthy relationship, and it is often only in moments of quiet or absence that we gain the clarity needed to truly understand ourselves. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create space not only for reflection on the relationship itself, but also for deeper self-examination. In the absence of constant communication, we are forced to focus inward, to evaluate our own emotions, desires, and boundaries. This is a necessary process for personal growth and for understanding what we truly need from a relationship. Without the noise of daily interactions, it becomes easier to discern whether we are engaging with someone out of genuine desire or out of habit, convenience, or the need to avoid loneliness. Self-awareness allows us to recognize when we are prioritizing others' needs over our own, or when we are compromising on our values to maintain the connection. Self-awareness allows us to interpret a landscape of face-to-face interactions in living reality, allows us to perceive connections with internal vital awareness, or when we are compromising on our values to maintain the connection. By stepping back from the routine of texting and calling, we create the opportunity to recenter ourselves and assess whether the relationship is truly aligned with our personal growth and happiness. And this is when you can start to build new relationships based on similar values or shared vision, similar passion. Furthermore, moments of absence allow us to examine the patterns in our own behavior. Do we feel secure enough to be alone, or do we constantly seek validation through communication? Do we rely on texting and calling as a way to avoid confronting our deeper emotional needs or insecurities? When the rhythm of constant interaction is interrupted, these questions become more apparent, and we are provided the chance to understand the motivations behind our actions. Self-awareness is not just about recognizing our strengths, but also about acknowledging our vulnerabilities and areas where we need growth. It is in these moments of silence and absence that we are given the space to become more attuned to our true selves and make decisions based on a more authentic understanding of who we are. Introspection is the process of looking inward, of examining our own thoughts, emotions, and experiences in order to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. It is a powerful tool for personal growth, yet it is often neglected in our fast-pacing, constantly connected world. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create a moment of pause that allows for introspection. Without the constant stream of communication, there is space to reflect on our feelings, desires, and actions. It's in this absence that we can truly evaluate the relationship, our role within it, and our deeper emotional needs. During moments of introspection, we can assess whether our feelings are genuine or if they are influenced by external factors like loneliness or fear of rejection. Are we seeking connection out of a true desire to build something meaningful, or are we simply filling a void? This kind of introspection is essential for emotional clarity because it helps us differentiate between fleeting emotions and more lasting, meaningful attachments. And it allows us to step back from the situation and see it from a more objective perspective, which is often difficult to do when we are caught up in the intensity of constant communication. And introspection also helps us evaluate the broader picture of our lives. It prompts us to ask questions about our values, our goals, and how the relationship aligns with our overall vision for the future. Without the distraction of texting or calling, we gain the opportunity to focus on what is truly important and whether the relationship supports or detracts from our own growth and happiness. It is in these quiet moments of self-reflection that we gain the insights necessary to make conscious, informed decisions about how to move forward. Authenticity is often seen as the foundation of any meaningful relationship, yet it is something that is frequently challenged by the pressures of constant communication. In a world where digital interactions are often fast, brief, and sometimes superficial, the ability to be truly authentic in our exchanges becomes difficult. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create the conditions for a more authentic connection to form. Without the constant noise of messages and phone calls, both parties are given the opportunity to reflect on what they truly want from the relationship and whether they are presenting their most genuine selves. This absence of communication allows each person to step away from the need to perform or live up to expectations. The pressure to always respond quickly, to be constantly available, or to keep up with the rhythm of digital interactions often forces us to engage in a manner that does not reflect our true feelings or intentions. In the quiet moments when texting and calling stop, there is room for authenticity to surface. Without the distractions of instant messaging or social media, we are more likely to communicate from a place of honesty, acknowledging our true emotions, desires, and boundaries. And so ultimately, those are the very things that our emotions are betraying about us. Being authentic is not just about expressing ourselves honestly. It's also about being vulnerable enough to allow the other person to see who we truly are, without pretense or facade. When we withdraw from constant communication, we stop hiding behind the immediacy of words and give ourselves the opportunity to evaluate our emotions in a deeper way. It is through this process of introspection, combined with the space that absence creates, that we can approach relationships with greater authenticity, revealing who we are without the external pressures that often dilute our true selves. Clarity is a precious commodity in a world that is constantly filled with noise and distractions. In relationships, particularly in our current digital age, clarity can often be obscured by the constant flow of messages, calls, and online presence. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create an opportunity for clarity to emerge, both in our own minds and in the relationship itself. The absence of immediate communication allows us to step back and view the situation more objectively without the constant interference of external noise. In this space, we can gain a clearer understanding of our emotions and the dynamics at play in the relationship. It is easy to become overwhelmed by the constant demands of digital communication, and in the process, we can lose sight of what we truly want, feel, and need. When we stop texting or calling, we remove the pressure to respond immediately, giving ourselves the time to reflect on what the relationship really means and whether it aligns with our deeper values. And so this reflection helps us to discern between fleeting emotions and genuine connection, between what is real and what might be a product of habit or external influence. Moreover, clarity helps us make better decisions. Without the clouded influence of constant communication, we can assess the relationship with a more rational mindset, free from the anxiety that often accompanies waiting for a reply or interpreting every message. This space allows us to distinguish between our own desires and expectations, and to make choices based on a clearer understanding of ourselves and the relationship. In this absence, we regain the ability to think critically, evaluate what we truly want, and move forward with a more informed perspective on the connection and the constant personal growth as we hit and share those critical details. Now, that connection and future, as I stated earlier, everything and everyone is connected to all the other things in our life. Value is often something that is taken for granted, particularly in relationships where communication is constant and expectations are high. When we stop texting or calling a man, we create an opportunity to evaluate the true value of the connection. It's easy to mistake frequent communication for genuine investment, but when the regular exchange of messages ceases, the relationship is forced to reveal its true worth. This absence allows both parties to reflect on the importance of the connection and whether it stands on its own merits or if it is being sustained simply by the habit of constant communication. That the real issue here is not if you gain or lose. It is more important that you gain the ability to have real, meaningful conversations. And when the flow of messages and calls stops, it exposes the underlying strength of the bond. If the connection is truly valuable, it will withstand the silence and distance. Both individuals will recognize the significance of the relationship and seek to nurture it. However, if the connection is shallow or based on external validation, the absence may lead to a natural decline. The value of the relationship becomes clearer in these moments of quiet because it forces both people to confront whether they are genuinely invested in each other or simply engaged in a routine of interaction. Moreover, this absence gives each individual the space to reflect on their own worth and what they expect from a relationship. By stepping back from constant communication, we can evaluate whether the relationship aligns with our own values, needs, and goals. Are we truly valuing ourselves in this connection, or are we seeking validation through constant interaction? So, if you decide on which course to take, it may be time to verify the priority statement you received. Determine how it adds up. The break in communication forces us to reconsider how much we value the relationship, the other person, and ultimately ourselves. It provides the opportunity to reassess our boundaries, our needs, and the type of connection we wish to foster.